Welcome to Shadow and Light, a film podcast with Molly and Sarah. I'm Molly.
And I'm Sarah.
Exactly. And we're here to talk about film, in case you didn't get that from the title. And other things.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be bringing in film studies analysis, some social issues, obviously.
Literary analysis?
Literary analysis, yeah, for sure. Well, we're both grad students, so we're studying, things relevant to this. We look at filmic texts all the time, so this is something that we have our academic feed in as well.
Yes. Master's degrees in literature.
Yes.
Coming to you at some point in the future when you can afford to finish your degree.
Yes. So we want to do this since
it's been months.
It's been months. We were still in classes, and we were still trying to figure out when we were going to have time to do this, and we just kept shunting it back and back and back because we were too busy.
Yeah, but the idea just kind of germinated. I will tell you where it started for me. So we were taking a medieval literature class, and I was sitting next to Sarah, and we didn't really know each other well at that point, but she knows basically every movie that's ever been made.
No.
And it's true. You're like, oh, yeah, that Polish version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that has an all-female cast from 1976. I have 2 copies of it. And so,
for the record, I don't.
And I don't know if that did exist, but if it does, we're going to talk about it. Anyways, so she mentioned having this movie called Death Takes a Holiday, which is a trip. It's like a 1930s black and white movie, and I had been wanting to see it because, who doesn't want to watch a movie where someone falls in love with the embodiment of death? And so we got together and watched that, and then it was just kind of the start of a beautiful filmic friendship. We just watched a ton since. Yeah,
and then we got talking in class, and every time we'd bring up a film, we'd be like, oh, we need to talk about that. Oh, we need to watch that together. And what I do is when I meet people and talk to people, it always ends up coming up that, oh, I have a spreadsheet of all the movies I've ever seen, and I'm on whatever is 688 at this point. So I'm trying to work up to 700, but I've watched a lot of movies.
That's true.
In my my old age of 31.
Oh, stop.
Stop it. So yeah, it's a personal journey for me to watch a ton of films and look at them and be thoughtful about them and just be thoughtful about what content that I'm consuming and but having fun with them too. I mean, we watch stuff that's technically not good movies, but they're not technically good, but they're fun, or maybe there's something redeeming about them, or that's a cult film that's it has a lot of redeeming features, but it's maybe the acting is genuinely terrible, but I mean, we're not going to be movie snobs about this. We're not going to watch only Criterion Collection DVDs and then forget everything else exists.
Exactly.
We're watching stuff Fall of the House of Usher, where
Vincent
Price is blonde. And
we're going to get to Fall of the House of Usher. That might be one of the greatest movies to ever come out of the 1960s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got that. Today we're going to be starting with. We're going to talk about Black Cat.
We're talking about the Black Cat. This is the one that we were like, we have to start with.
Yes, because this was the second. So trippy.
It is. It was the second movie we ever watched together. Right after we watched Death Takes a Holiday, and Sarah goes, "You know what would be uplifting? The 1934 Black Cat with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff." I was like, okay, I know nothing about it.
Yeah,
just. Because while you have seen 688 movies, I haven't seen that many, but I watch them a lot, and I'm really into weird genre movies and sci-fi. Watched all that stuff. So
you don't really have a genre of movie.
I don't.
It's kind of a lot. I mean, I talk to people all the time and say, "Oh, what do you like? What do you are you an adventure kind of movie person, or are you just rom-coms or whatever?" And it's I love meeting people who say, "I'll watch anything that's good or anything that appeals to me," because it's really open-minded and you discover really great stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the only genre I really don't watch are just modern dramas, just because they depress me too much. I'm you know what? I don't need to bring that into my oral sphere of existence. I just want good vibes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I watch trailers sometimes if I have time at work, although I have trailers on in my ear while I'm trying to do filing or something. And it's they're so depressing. I thought, there's a preview of 6 trailers, and each one in a row was so depressing. And I'm I have to watch something that's a little more lighthearted.
I know, especially when it's Oscar season, then it's just either it's super depressing or it's a British guy who needs to overcome something. And they're you can speak now.
You mean King's Speech, which is one of my top 20 favorite films. But again, it's another white guy who's struggling so hard because being a white man is so hard.
So hard. It's so hard to be. I mean, look at the Marvel movies.
Please note, level of sarcasm here. Yes. It's going to come up a lot.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Marvel movies. So many white guys just have it rough. You know,
I feel for them. I really do.
I really do. It must be hard to be Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, terrible.
Anyways,
It really sucks.
How about we talk about how did you get interested in film in the first place? Just kind of let's kick it off before we dive into the Black Cat.
Yeah. Well, gosh, that's a good question. I was thinking about this a few days ago when I was visiting my folks. I was thinking to myself, well, I never went to the movies. We had a theater nearby, and I desperately wanted to go. We only went, as far as I can remember, one time to see Free Willy in theaters. So obviously I just dated myself with that. But it's just, and I had a blast. I mean, it wasn't the best movie in the world, but as a little kid, it's fantastic. And I was like, I have to go back to the theater. And then, of course, they shut down the theater, and they tore it down. They built something else in its place. And I don't know why. And we don't have a theater in my parents' town, and it's really depressing. So we never went to the movies because my parents weren't interested in movies. I didn't really have any friends to go with, to go to the movies too. And I had to have video. And, back in the day, as they say, God, I hate that phrase. Back in the day, we had Video Update and we had Blockbuster and we had all these places, and Hollywood Video, and I lived in those places, man. I was like, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, I'm like, I gotta check something out. Yeah. And then I don't want to know what it was exactly, but in my teens, I was a big fan of movies since I was a tiny kid, like Star Wars, huge crush on Harrison Ford since I was like 6 years old.
Mark Hamill.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those movies really changed my life. A lot of like quirky Disney sci-fi movies that we'll probably talk about at some point. But yeah, I was captivated by those, and I had a tiny VHS collection that I coveted. And my parents would introduce me to movies because they knew that I would appreciate maybe older themes. And so I grew up watching movies that maybe not necessarily are rated, but they're for adults. They're not just kids movies. So I would watch a mixture of some Disney movies and some older movies. And then in my teens, I would say like maybe 15 or 16, I really got sucked into older movies because I saw a picture in a book of like a very handsome film star who happened to be Leslie Howard. And so I watched all of his films. There were a lot of VHS of his films available. I was very lucky. And I came across all of those, and I watched all of those, and I absolutely loved them. And then I got into the 1930s as a kind of just a movement, and I read the book Frankenstein. Then I wanted to see the film, and then I was captivated by Boris Karloff, and I used to have pictures of him up all over my wall up until I was like in my mid-20s. So yeah, I have, my whole life has been a kind of a filmic journey or journey through film. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have kind of a weird upbringing in that my mother loves classic Hollywood musicals. I mean, a ton of VHSs of everything that Bing Crosby was in, Judy Garland. So on one hand, I had my mother, who's really into classic Hollywood musicals. On the other hand, I had my father, who's really into like 70s action sci-fi movies. And so I grew up with a mixture of Singing in the Rain one day and then Star Wars the next. And I was also a princess, and I loved Disney growing up. And movies were kind of the one thing that my family could do together, because I really wasn't into sports. My mom isn't as much into sports. My dad will watch basically anything. And then my sister is also a little more on the athletic side than I am. And so, but that's the one thing we could always do. And it usually ends up being genre films that we watch. The family has a very specific palette about the type of movies we watch. We watch Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, the Marvel movies, Harry Potter, the Bourne Identity movies, and my dad gets his way because he loves that series. And then he's been pushing for this one called The Ghost in the Darkness forever. It's about these two lions in Africa. And the one, I think I told you about it.
Wait, I've heard of that. Either you told me about it or I've heard about it before. That's a famous film.
Yeah. He's been pushing it for years. We're just like, we're not watching it, Dad. Like, when I go over, I'm like, I'm not watching this. So, but my facts...
I think you should give in. No, I'm kidding.
I've seen it, though. It's like, I don't want to watch it again. It's just people... Yeah. Oh, we watched the Jurassic World movies a lot, too. Basically, just the modern genre blockbusters my family is really into.
That's cool, though.
And, but as I've gotten older, I've been more and more interested in classic film, especially as much as I love the blockbuster movies coming out. They're very formulaic.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we're studying literature kind of leads into the idea we want to kind of experience good movies and bad movies, but not just the same movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I'm looking for. So,
and we also, I noticed, me personally, but also I think both of us kind of in tandem have noticed themes that pop up in older movies and they're still relevant to today, or you'll see something that heavily influenced something that heavily influenced something else, that's something that we consume now that's more quote unquote modern. I'm doing air quotes, by the way. And I don't know, I think we're exploring.
Yeah.
It's super fun. I mean, I'm sucking you into 1930s,
which
obviously.
I'm excited about. And stories are universal, and there's a reason why we are still learning about the Odyssey. Like, there's just themes in stories that just last any time.
Absolutely.
Or outlast time, I guess, itself. And so I think my kind of goal for this is for whoever listens to kind of also go on this journey with us and experience some films that aren't exactly what you would normally think about watching on a Friday night or whatever, but doing it anyways. And I think you'll be surprised by how much you enjoy it, because we have a blast.
Yeah.
We have
absolutely.
A total blast.
Our film talks are great. Well, we do commentary while we watch a movie.
Exactly.
That's a blast. Like, the first time we watched, Death Takes a Holiday, we were making snarky comment after snarky. It was so fun, though.
It was so much.
Because, we're ready to make fun of things, but we want to take things seriously, too. So I think we have a really healthy outlook on how to discuss things.
You can love something and recognize that it has flaws. Because everything that is human has flaws.
Yeah. And things change, in terms of, like, what is kind of acceptable, what used to be really serious and now is super corny because it's maybe become a trope, or because people just have a different attitude in society, or not even just serious stuff, just like even romance stuff, which we will talk about later with the whole hair sniffing thing.
Oh my
gosh. Believe me, that's a trip.
So much hair
But anyway.
That sounds really weird when you say it quietly.
So
much hair sniffing. Okay, anyways.
Okay, so, do you want to just dive in and talk about the movie?
Let's talk. First, for you
we got to summarize.
Who do not know The Black Cat, this movie has everything you could possibly want. First of all, it's black and white, means it's artsy.
Yes.
Has Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, two of the best character actors of all time.
Yeah.
Period. Takes place in a random European country, so there's going to be shenanigans. It has... Let's see, what else does it have? It has Boris Karloff in a blonde wig, which is...
I think he might have actually dyed his hair.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know how much hair... See, I don't know how much hair he had.
I don't know either. It's almost as exciting as seeing Vincent Price blonde, but, like, not quite so much.
Yeah.
Let's see. It has weird modern Jetsons architecture, but in, like, a 1930s film.
Yes.
It has a black cat, but also that black cat has nothing to do with the plot whatsoever.
Yeah.
It has... What is it? It has the embalming of women.
Oh, God.
It has incest. We got necrophilia. We got Satanism. It's a movie for everyone. It's like whatever you're looking for, it's going to have.
Yes.
Sorry, that accent came out of nowhere.
That was adorable, and honestly, that's cute. We need to do that. Whenever we feel like it, just do a random accent to make things more exciting.
This movie just has everything.
It's a feast, and I was so... It's a
feast of riches.
It's a feast of rotting fruit. No.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I knew I wanted to share this movie with you, because not only do I find it personally kind of moving, but also laughably ridiculous.
Yes.
I have so many mixed emotions about the film. I had to share it with somebody, and I knew you would appreciate it. So I was watching the movie.
For sharing.
Yes.
It was great. And like you said, there's a lot that's it's kind of funny just in how absurd it is nowadays. But
there's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in. And a lot of the research I did really went deep with it, which we're going to get to later, because there's a lot of really funky themes going on. And also, this is ripe for a remake, which I will do my speed pitch later.
You're going to do your speed pitch?
I'm going to do my speed pitch. Speed pitch. Okay, but what is The Black Cat about? It's not about a black cat.
Yeah.
Nor is it about the Edgar Allan Poe story, The Black Cat, even though that's what the studio said it was about.
Well, that's what... So Edgar G. Ilmer, the actor, and I'm going off of Wikipedia, or not Wikipedia, IMDb, because this is my limited research on the movie. But I've been air quotes studying this for years. So I know a little bit about Edgar G. Ilmer, the director. He's a little bit weird. But anyway, he admitted apparently in an interview that the story was supposed to draw the audience's attention by kind of implying that it was connected to Edgar Allan Poe's story, but really it has nothing to do with it whatsoever. I don't even know what The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe is about.
I feel like he stuffs a wife in a wall.
Oh, okay. So there's that.
But that could be any number of Edgar Allan Poe stories.
I mean, just wow.
Just like pick one. It's a dead wife in a wall.
Throw a dart. Seriously, I don't even know. But yeah, and that was, I mean, that's typical of gimmicky Universal at the time. Oh, is 100%. We're just gonna. The audience isn't as informed as they are now. Mm-hmm. I mean, even Nosferatu, the early one from the 20s. I mean, there's a shot where they say, "Oh, it's a werewolf," and it's clearly a hyena. So, I mean, the audience, they assume that the audience is not informed, which is valid because I don't think the general audience would be as informed as people are nowadays about those kind of intricacies. I mean, well, especially a hyena is not an intricacy, but
but like quote unquote exotic things. Yeah, because the world was a little bit bigger back then than it is now. Yeah. Whereas if like you had King Kong on the screen and someone was like, "That's Godzilla," you'd be like, "No, you're wrong. I'm gonna put on my literature analyst hat and tell you what you're wrong."
That is also a valid accent.
Also, I watched Godzilla last night, so that's why it's on my brain.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways,
so the plot is essentially, and I tried to synopsize this last night and I gave up because I rewatched the movie. I'm like, I should probably write a little quick synopsis I can read up.
We should try and like summarize it in a sentence first.
Yes.
Okay. American couple on a honeymoon runs into Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff hate each other with a passion for reasons we'll get into later. Yep. And then at the end, there's an exploding house.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
That's basically it.
Because trying to summarize the rest of the plot would take many more sentences.
Yeah. It just makes more sense to almost walk through the plot of the movie and then talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, especially for a movie like this, because you can say, "Oh, well, Annihilation is about, there's this asteroid that lands and things happen and then they go into it." But like for this, it's like it's almost indescribable because it is kind of dialogue based, and it's also there's also some kind of visual elements that you really can't synopsize into a plot.
No, you really can't. It's stunning to look at. It is horrifying in some ways.
And it was, and this is interesting because apparently so Boris Karloff's character is based on a real life like set designer or whatever, because the character's an architect in the film, and so like they wanted to make his house like top form, style. So it's very. I mean, you look at it, you go, "Oh, that's Bauhaus," or that's Art Deco, yes. And I mean, it's gorgeous, but it's very to them. I mean, in the 30s, it must have been even more ultra modern than it does. You said the Jetsons, and the Jetsons is obviously to a certain extent influenced by Bauhaus. But yeah, they wanted to go with that. And then that kind of, I mean, I talk about this a little bit too. I mean, I've told you a little bit about this, but like high contrast art. And, you have these sharp angles and lines. And that was very much a thing that was brought over, that German Expressionism was brought over to Universal and to Hollywood in the 20s and 30s by these, I could say immigrant people, the directors were often like German, or maybe they were Jewish and they wanted to escape, this coming turmoil and stuff. And so it's very, so you see the influence, especially if you look, I mean, some of the first kind of opening shots of the house. Not necessarily, the house, but also in the inside, like there are definitely some sharp angles and things. And even in like the final kind of, Satan worshiping moment, you've got the stark lines and stuff. And so it's interesting.
No, it's really interesting. Well, and what's even more incredible about it is that they shot the film in 15 days.
Yeah, I cannot believe that.
15 days for $90,000, because that does not look like a $90,000 set. That looks like a much more expensive set.
It really does. I mean, honestly, it looks like gold-plated IKEA or something. Yeah, I don't know,
something like that. Random. So, we should set up the house too that they're in. So basically, the film starts out, and you're in the train cabin with this American couple who's on their honeymoon just in the middle of this random place in Europe, which is like, okay, whatever.
Well, and traveling to Europe in the 30s for people who are vaguely affluent was kind of the thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, and they are on the Orient Express.
Oh, perfect.
I made sure to check that last night. I was like, oh, where are they? Yeah. And they are, they have their train tickets out, and it's like, oh, Orient Express, whatever.
Anyways, so the couple's sitting there, and this is where the erotic hair sniffing starts to come in, because instead of, kissing his wife or hugging her, he has his cheek plastered against her forehead and goes, "Oh, darling." Yeah, something like that. That's the most sensual it gets, but it happens multiple times. Yeah. And then Bela Lugosi strolls in, and the train conductor's like, "Oh, this guy needs to sit somewhere," and they're like, "Oh, he can sit with us, whatever." Yeah. And then there's a time jump, and you see that they're sleeping, and then the husband, what's his name?
David Manners.
David Manners. Well, that was the actor, but
His last name's Allison.
Peter Allison?
Peter Allison, yeah, that's right.
He wakes up and sees that Bela Lugosi is caressing the face of his wife, and he just kind of looks at him, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry.
What?
She reminded me of my dead wife, Karen.
Your accent's better than his. Seriously. But seriously, would you let a weirdo like that in your train compartment in the first place? The conductor comes by and is like, hey, I know you're all on your honeymoon.
Asleep.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know you're all on your honeymoon. You're being like super erotic hair sniffing time. But, would you mind sharing your compartment with a super creepy old dude? And they're like, yeah, I guess. And then it's like, yeah, do you mind if I, apologize for watching your wife sleep and everything? But yeah, she reminds me of my dead wife. And then he goes into a big thing, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I guess I can see that." I'm like,
he was in jail for 15 years for some reason.
Karen, my wife, and
it's related to the First World War. I know I read about why he's in jail, but it really doesn't.
I think he's just a prisoner of war.
He's a prisoner of war. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so but he's going to go and visit his frenemy. Basically.
Boris Karloff, whose name is
Polzig.
Hjalmar
Polzig, yeah.
Ooh, that was good.
The reason I can say it that well is because I've watched this movie like 30 times.
Right.
So I kind of know. But it's so funny because it's like, okay, he's going to go clear up this issue. Mm-hmm. They've got this deep-seated feud,
which we don't know what it is yet.
But I mean, the whole point is like once you get into it, let's talk about the car crash first.
Yes, okay.
So the crash happens, and of course, there's a rainstorm.
It's raining. They're in the car. Rainstorm. The car crashes, and the Bela Lugosi and the honeymoon couple are in the same car. And so the wife, she just passes. She's unconscious.
She's unconscious in some way, shape, or form. Basically, what do we do? Let's go up to this big creepy house. All right, sounds like a plan.
Yeah, and
it's Rocky Horror Picture Show, basically,
but with more Satanism.
With more Satanism and less fishnets.
I don't know which one I like better. They're both good options.
That's excellent.
Anyways, they go to this house that Boris Karloff has built.
On top of his old command center from the First World War, to the point where it's like connected to part of the trenches.
It is.
He's...
and didn't he sell out all of his soldiers? Like, he sold out all the soldiers, and so a bunch of them died there. Bela Lugosi was one of the ones that got captured, and he built this gigantic house there.
Yep.
And then they just kind of stroll in.
It's free real estate. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know.
Bringing in the memes,
it's horrible.
Yeah, that's terrible. But yeah, that's so it's super creepy. But I think a lot of these, and not to get nerdy about World War I because that's my thing. Mm-hmm. In the 30s, I think these directors they were coming from that place of the war, and even you'll see monster movies and stuff. It's like a lot of times it's reflecting, guys were damaged in the war, their faces are mutilated, they're wearing masks. Yeah. I mean, you know about all that. You looked up that stuff too.
So there's actually an article I found in a book called The Philosophy of Horror, which I want to read the entire thing of.
Oh, sweet. Another book that I don't have time to read. Great.
Yeah, I know. It's called, the chapter, I guess, is called The Fall of the House of Ulmer, Europe versus America in the Gothic Vision of the Black Cat. I know.
Where did you find that book?
I literally, I just searched for it on our library website. And it pulled up the article.
I need that.
It's so good. Anyway, so what it says is...
Erotic hair sniffing.
Okay. See, it's weird when you
It is weird. Now I'm creeping myself out. Continue.
Okay.
Continue.
So, anyways, who wrote the chapter? Paul Cantor wrote that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that author.
Stages a confrontation. Oh, that'd be cool, though. Yeah. The film stages a confrontation between the old world and the new and attempts to define the one way of line by comparison with the other.
Yeah.
Ulmer draws about the European Gothic tradition to create a ruined castle for the 20th century, a haunted house shadowed by the new horrors of the modern world, specifically the nightmare of the Great War, 1914 to 1918.
That's a sweet quote.
It was a great quote.
That's amazing. Well, that encompasses so much. I mean, there's that documentary that I still need you to watch, by the way, the one that goes with Frankenstein.
Yes.
From 1931. And Kenneth Branagh actually narrates that. And you're like, wow, sweet. So they talk about a lot of that, how the First World War influenced, I nearly said finance, influenced the films of the 20s and 30s, like majorly. I mean, and the more you dig into it, the more you see.
Yeah.
You really do. And I think Universal, that became part and parcel of Universal Monsters because the people who formed it in the beginning were not American. I mean, the guy like James Whale's British, and the other ones are, either German or Polish or Jewish or whatever.
Something.
And, they're from either Eastern Europe or England. And so they have a different perspective than Americans do on the war, a lot darker view of the war. Yes. And I think that definitely kind of lines up with, like Shelley's Gothic that we're used to as Americans.
Yeah, well, the quote that I wrote down that came after that is just as good. It says, "To show the true horror of World War I, Ulmer turned to the Gothic tradition and shaped an unnerving parable of Europe in the aftermath of a monstrous conflict, a whole continent that seems incestuously turned in upon itself, in love with death, and headed toward an orgy of self-destruction."
Damn.
Right.
That's amazing. Okay, I need to get a copy of this.
I will absolutely get you a copy of the article. Anyways,
I'm very excited about that.
So they arrive. So they're at this house.
Yes.
They're at the house, and honestly, you just rewatched it, so you can probably summarize this better, because it just kind of becomes a blur until the dead women. It is kind of a blur.
Yeah, it is a blur until the dead women.
It feels like a nightmare.
It's kind of like, okay, they just got married, right? And they're sleeping in different rooms. Okay, that's the 30s. It's code. Whatever it is, I don't know.
Well, this is writing the line of, like, the code.
Well, yeah, I don't know. We got to do some research on Hays Code, because we were talking about films. But, I mean, I don't know. I think it was just slightly before code.
Yeah.
But I was looking, there's a lot of censorship that's been done on this movie. Even in later years, it was, stuff's cut out. People didn't even show it in certain countries, not just because of the Satanism, but because of the gross things. And I think even Ulmer himself, had some restrictions. They're like, no, you can't do this. He made it even more violent. That's why he added the embalming scene. Yeah. No, yeah. And so I was there was another parallel Moderni's Haunted Screen to Universal Horror article that I found that basically lists out everything in the film. And it says, while the film features an unprecedented array of crimes and abnormalities, including sadism, torture, incest, murder, revenge, Satanism, necrophilia, ailurophobia, which is the fear of cats. Oh,
voyeurism,
there's a name.
I know. And in an earlier draft of the screenplay, rape, which I'm super glad they cut.
Yikes.
The master narrative is clearly one of betrayal and the final reckoning with wartime trauma, which kind of ties in with what we said earlier. But yeah, this is a dark movie. You never really see anything, but it alludes to it.
It alludes to a hell of a lot.
It really does.
I find it, I first watched this when I was a teenager, maybe, I don't know, 18, 19? So I was older and I could deal with it, but it still was extremely dark. I remember looking at the screen thinking, I can't look at anything else. I can't think about anything else. Because I'm so sucked into this deep, dark, it is a chasm. This movie is a chasm. It's incredible. But that's another great quote. Wow.
I know. Oh, and apparently, sidebar, Karen was supposed to be a cat woman.
Oh, really?
But I don't know what that means. And the author of the article, Gerd Germunden, did not elaborate. And I want to know what Mundy. A cat woman is.
Yeah. Well, are they referring to, vampiric legends about cat people? Because, partly because of that movie we watched. But also, I have a book on, vampire mythology because I'm a nerd like that. And there's a lot, there's always one or two cultures that kind of reference, a cat, or there's even a cat that's half snake or something in some culture. And it's but it's vampiric or something. It's very, so it's basically a giant leech that's half cat. Anyway.
So is it cute or creepy?
It's both. Oh God, you know what? No,
it's just
creepy.
Just kidding.
Gee whiz. Yeah. But no, it's definitely, the whole cat vampire connection is there. So I don't know what they mean by cat people exactly, in what context they're talking about. Does she morph into a cat?
See, because I think the film is crazy enough as it is. You don't need to bring in cat people into this thing.
It's definitely, it looks like an undergrad's fever dream. Be honest, this whole movie, it's you just let's just throw everything at it that I've got that's super dark and depressing and go for it.
See what sticks. This is some guy just brings us into this is what I wrote for my career. I think it really just talks about the human condition. You read it and you're like,
that's the voice. That's the voice.
That is the voice.
I'm trying to think what else did I want to.
Okay, so
we talked about the mansion, and we talked about and then enter Boris Karloff.
With
the blonde dude in the duck's ass style, and a widow's peak and arched brow,
and they're really going for the exotic, erotic European look.
Oh
it's very
absolutely, which is ironic because in real life he's Anglo-Indian and his skin was darker and was sort of he was racialized in Hollywood and didn't get major film roles a lot of the time because he played the monster. He didn't play the leading man, or he played these other roles because he's not typical white American male kind of thing. But anyway, I find it interesting that he's playing this, which is very kind of very white, and even the blonde thing is very much of a theme. It's kind of that, creepy Nazi Aryan type of deal. Obviously this is pre-Nazism, but you're leaning into that because it's the 30s. So it's interesting and ironic that they have him kind of looking like that. And he's wearing a sort of kimono too.
He wears a black silk robe basically all the time. And
which is super hot, by the way.
I was like, should I be feeling like slightly attracted to this guy who embalms women?
Probably not, but it's a movie.
Well, he just gives an incredible performance. I
think he does.
It's really understated too, especially for what the role is.
Yeah.
He could have gone full Bela Lugosi in The Raven.
Oh God, yeah, embarrassing levels of acting,
right? No,
or non-acting, just kind of freaking out. Basically,
he plays it perfectly.
I think he does. Because you have to have a certain.
You got to have a certain little bit of just restraint and somebody.
You need to have a certain level of power, and kind of, in a way, he has a certain. I did it again. A certain level of dignity. So he's supposed to have dignity to a certain degree, which is ironic because he's playing, a Satanist who embalms women who walks around with his pet cat and
by the way,
fondles statues while looking at the wife. Remember that scene?
That is something that they did bring up too.
Yikes.
Hold on.
Let me just grip the statue in an erotic way because I'm thinking about your wife.
Yeah, the key element in his character is his possessiveness. He prefers the embalmed woman to the living one because only in that state can he make her completely his own and enjoy her in a state of perfection forever.
Absolutely. And I think that obsession with perfection and kind of vanquishing death comes from the war because that's my theory. I'm not saying it excuses him in any way. But I think it's important that, we kind of note that they do talk about the war. There's a little conversation where Lugosi and Karloff are talking about it. And they're, I think, ironically, the kind of level-headed one in the situation is Lugosi. And he's kind of being the voice of reason and saying, yeah, this was mass murder. This was terrible. And yet you're kind of ignoring that by building your house on top of the front, essentially, for them. And it was so they do talk about that. But I think that's what kind of messes both of them up. Yeah. I think they have their hang-ups for whatever reason. Obviously, Lugosi's not quite as bad, although he does stroke the wife, stroke the face of the wife, which is kind of creepy. But it's not as messed up as, killing women and putting them in giant glass cases.
Right. Yeah.
Which is my favorite scene, by the way. And the first time I watched it, I literally cried. Because it's very emotional. He's holding this cat.
Yeah, so this is everyone else is asleep. So
everyone's asleep at this point.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to sleep or whatever. And the wife is still kind of semi-unconscious because of the crash. So he's like, oh, let me go check on my women. Kind of like, when people go water all their plants. It's like, I'm just going to go check on my women. So he's got his cat. He's stroking the cat. And that, in a way, is its own kind of erotic sidebar of cats, black cats equals sexuality or devil worship or whatever. And he's got the cat, he's walking up and down, you see all these women, and you're like, whoa, this guy's super messed up. And so I'm trying to think how the plot advances from there. But anyway, it's very emotional because he's alone and he's messed up and his life is, this movie is not going to end well for him. And it's really sad that the war messed him up that bad. And he's obviously, he's that kind of person to begin with, but then it kind of shows how he's obsessive about death. He's very possessive,
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing from the Germunden article. And they talk about it a little bit because then the next day comes and they're playing chess and Lugosi's like, I want you to tell me what happened to my wife and my daughter, and there's a conversation that comes up about the war and living past it, and they both kind of talk about, or the article basically says that they both suffer the fate of spiritual death that befalls those who survived the war. Turning them into the living dead. And this idea of Lugosi and Karloff as the living dead from the war is in a bunch of these articles that I read.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's highly significant then that they need to return to the site of prior torment to settle their final score. And that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
And so they're playing this chess game, and the honeymoon couple is kind of like, things are kind of weird here, maybe we should leave.
Yeah.
And Karloff wants the wife, for his collection, and Lugosi's like, you can't have them. And so their final kind of confrontation here is about who's going to get the Americans out, who's going to win the Americans.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then he takes him to his little gallery, and he's like, oh, gee, here's your first wife, Karen.
Oh, Lugosi.
Yeah, he shows, so Lugosi's first wife, Karen, And she's floating there. And I see, this is what's unclear to me. And I'm getting the sense that she did die of natural causes, and she was kind of the first woman that he embalmed.
Oh,
because
okay.
she died. I was rewatching this last night, and she died of influenza.
Mm-hmm.
And then he embalmed. Well, that's what he says. And so you kind of don't believe him because of all the other women. But then it would kind of, in a weird sort of way, make sense that was the thing that tipped him over the edge. Because he's like, okay, I'm going to embalm her, and then, gee, I need to do that with every other wife. Yeah. And I mean, it's messed up anyway that he's married the daughter.
Yeah,
because that's messed up. Yeah.
Bela Lugosi's wife, Karen, he and his wife Karen had a daughter, also named Karen, also blonde. I think maybe played by the same actress.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah. Boris Karloff, who is adopted and raised her, has also married her. Mm-hmm. And he told Bella that she's dead.
But she's just in the bedroom sleeping.
Yeah, he is like, I don't want you to leave the bedroom tomorrow or whatever. But then she does, and so he has to kill her.
Yes.
You know? Just a bummer. Although I'm curious, I don't know how embalming works.
I don't know either.
Another sidebar. I don't feel like you can preserve bodies like that.
No. I mean, they say embalming, but I have a feeling that obviously the process is a lot more involved.
Right.
Because you have to, I mean, he's suspended, and he suspended all the women in there. And, I know there was a harness situation.
Yeah. And you can tell. What's cool is if you watch closely enough, you can see the women breathing.
Which is exciting. I mean, they say that I was looking more on on IMDb, and apparently Ulmer was kind of sadistic, and he at one point left her or one of the other women kind of suspended while they went to go have lunch or something. I don't know. That could be a Hollywood urban legend because there are a lot of those. But at the same time, knowing what I do about 1930s Hollywood wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But his daughter seemed really nice. Yeah. So I can't imagine he's that bad, but I don't know. We don't know any of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, trying to suspend them and thinking, okay, scientifically, how does this work?
But again, with all movies, it's not really about the other, those external things that are happening. That's more about shock value. It's really about the trauma.
We're looking at the scientific novum and trying to not scientific, but we're trying to figure out how it works scientifically when that's not the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then
I'm guilty of that all the time.
Right. No, I am too. So then they have this bet, and Boris Karloff takes the husband and puts him in this room, and you think he's going to be trapped. However, he escapes eventually with some help. And then the wife is knocked unconscious again or gassed or something like that. And then all these people show up. And guess what? There's going to be a black mass.
Yeah.
Surprise!
Casual Satanism.
But I mean,
even the first scene where you see him in bed, he's like, oh, good night, my dear. And then he opens up, you think, a Bible. And it's Satan. And you're like, okay, that's nifty. Where is this going to go? But yeah, the mass is kind of surprising because it's where do all these people come from? Because they live where? On the top of a hillside? Where are they even located? It's kind of nebulous.
And it's curious that they even brought that element in. I'm not sure if it was for shock value because it really.
I'm pretty sure it must have been for shock because they don't.
Shock
it doesn't
value,
really.
But also, I think to kind of talk about just Europe as festering and evil.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
America as sort of the new hope because the people that are able to escape and are able to move on from this experience and not get dragged down by it.
I didn't kind of realize that symbolism, but I'm seeing that kind of nationalist.
Yeah, and I mean, we joke I do not handle movies that deal with demons and stuff well, and this movie really doesn't. And what's interesting is this is right before pre-code, so you're seeing, and this I found in the Universal Studios A Legacy of Horror book that even though, and I'm amazed first of all that they got this scene in a 1934 movie.
That was a miracle and a half, I tell you.
It says signs that the Breen Office, Hollywood Censorship Board, was involved can be detected by listening very carefully to Karloff's Latin invocation.
Yeah.
It is largely nonsense, comprised of phrases like cave conum, which means beware of dog, in vino veritas, in wine is truth, and most pertinently, cum grano salis, with a grain of salt.
That's so great.
And then, surprise, among the revelers is John Carradine.
I didn't see him.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to gosh.
Then acting under the name of Peter Richmond. Thank you, Michael Mallory.
That's amazing.
Right?
I need to look closely at that scene again. But yeah, it's a weird scene, and they're not even dressed how you would think they were traditionally for Satan. I mean, I don't know how Satan works, but it doesn't. But it looks like they're. I mean, they even dress her up in her like sort of sacrificial gown, which is basically just a poofy, cute 30s dress.
Yeah.
There's not really any mystery to it, or it's cut weird, or no, it's like it literally looks like a cute little, maybe like an Austrian or German sundress.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
also
random.
Another sidebar. There's like a woman dressed up like a German barmaid that's just in his house.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this isn't practical wear. I don't
think maids would be dressed up like that.
I don't feel like German people really wear the barmaid outfit that much.
Especially not to work. Yeah, we talked about them being kind of victims of war, and then yeah, like his cute little bedtime reading, The Rights of Lucifer.
Yeah.
Okay, you do you. And then someone's playing Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Again. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I love that tune beginning to end. I think it's one of my favorite classical pieces. Mm-hmm. But that's where the whole thing started, because it must have been cheap or something.
Well, those classical
easy to play.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the whole soundtrack is nothing but classical
there's no
excerpts.
Copyright issues with it.
Right, so they don't care. They're just going to be like, we're just going to throw this together. But we do hear a pretty big section of the famous which you hear more of it than just the opening, which is kind of nice.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. I liked it. But, I mean, at one point I think he's miming, and you can tell that he's really badly miming playing the organ.
They were still figuring out how to do sound on the past.
That's very true. That's very true.
So, anyways,
but then before the whole Satan thing happens, though, they do Allison and his wife, what's his first name, Peter. They try to get out, and then he tries to phone, and then he goes, "You hear that, Vitus? Even the phone is dead."
Oh.
And I'm like, he's got that beautiful, rich voice with a lisp. It's so cute.
And he has that little evil smirk.
Yes! No one does the evil smirk quite like Karloff, which is it's oddly dreamy. I don't know. I like that guy a lot.
I like a nice evil smirk. I don't know about you.
It's one of the things I look for in a man.
Yeah. Top of the list. That, and then good mustache.
Evil smirk.
Can you party with that mustache?
Yes, that's another theme that we will... When we talk about Death Takes a Holiday, we're going to be talking about Molly's beautiful outburst about mustaches.
So random sidebar. This is, I think, what really got it started for us. We're watching this movie, and I'm like, okay, I get it that the guy that plays Death is hot, but the guy she's supposed to be with, I mean, like, he has a mustache I would party with. And Sarah lost it. I was just kind of saying it just because he has, like, a Clark Gable, I was like, yeah, I'd make out with that face. And then it's just, that's become a thing.
I was beat red. I was laughing so darn hard. I couldn't contain it.
It's the beginning of our friendship.
But yes, and so that's how we're going to be rating movies, probably with, like, cats and mustaches and stars.
There's no mustaches in this movie, unfortunately.
Right. Well, Bela Lugosi throws a knife at the cat.
Does he?
Yeah, he throws a knife, and he kills it.
Does he?
Yeah, because Peter Allison actually says, why am I calling him by his full name? Peter actually says, oh, well, he killed the cat. And he's like, oh, he has a terrible fear of cats. And you're like, it's never explained why he has a fear of cats. He just has a random fear of cats. It's totally random. So I don't understand.
I mean, the whole cat thing is supposed to...
It's supposed to be the linchpin, but it doesn't really. Yeah. I mean, I guess, there's a thing where they talk about, I think Karloff says it, about how, when a black cat dies, its evil soul goes into another person, and you're like, okay, I guess I can see how, so evil can be sort of transmitted like a disease, which I understand because, like war is kind of a disease. You can use it as a metaphor. If you really look... That whole thing is strung together by the cat. But it's very tenuous.
Well, and I think it's supposed to be more...
Not even cat gut, like string.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be more like symbolic shorthand. Like, there's the black cat, he's evil.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, she's a redhead, she's going to steal your husband.
And also, fun side note, I was looking in here, when they retitled it, because I know they retitle movies every time they go to Britain, or vice versa, they didn't call it the black cat because apparently black cats are lucky in England, which I wasn't aware of. So I guess that's an Eastern European thing that made it over to the States, America. But then must have missed out England.
Weird.
That's very bizarre. Growing up English, I've never really heard that before. So now I have to look into it. But yeah, that was an interesting side note. But
yeah. Okay, so we're at the service, whatever. He's gonna try and sacrifice Joan. Is her name Joan?
Joan. Yeah.
Oh, look at.
Nice.
Pulling that out of nowhere. He's going to try and sacrifice Joan, but Bela Lugosi's like, no. And he takes her, and he's like, get out of here. We have to go.
Yeah.
And then Boris Karloff chases them because he's like, that's my sacrifice. And then so Boris and Bela have the final showdown.
Which is quite violent, by the way.
In the embalming room. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, they really do kind of tear into each other.
They do. Yeah, they go at each other, and then somehow Bela gets Boris tied up on this rack.
Yeah.
And and then it's implied, and he like talks about
Well, you
it.
see the in shadow, and then you hear him screaming later, which I reheard last night, and I was like, oh god,
I don't know if I heard that ever.
It's terrifying. You hear it from a distance, so it's not in your face, but there's nothing more terrifying than a man screaming. I don't know. To me, that creeps me out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what scares me the most.
Yeah, but anyway, so that thing happens, but yeah, so then he rips his clothes off, and it's his shirt off, and then honestly, it's kind of erotic in a weird sort of way. You're like, I can see people having a kink about this. But anyway, so he rips his
about
what
specifically? About what?
Well, being sort of tied up and having clothes ripped
off.
Oh,
like BDSM. Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's sort of like
but then
it's Bella's BDSM version of Yoko Ono. You know, she cut her clothes off for it was like a performance art thing.
No.
Oh my gosh, you have to see the video later. So anyway, but anyway, his clothes are being ripped off, and he's like kind of trussed up basically, and he's kind of hot in an emaciated sort of way, kind of sinewy. You know how he looks like a chicken, kind of splayed out. Anyway, but
this is not helping your case.
No, it's
like
not.
A chicken splayed out. That's my ideal body type in a man.
Emaciated on a rack.
Well, because
emaciated on a rack with an evil smirk and a blonde-haired. No, I'm just.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But then Bela Lugosi, I don't know what he says, but basically he skins him.
He's really excited because he's looking around for knives and like, oh, you have a big selection. Great, I'll pick a couple. You know, let's cut into you, and you're like...
And then, there's a magic red button that he hits, and the building's gonna explode.
Because every house has a self-destruct button. It does. I mean, mine does. Does yours? I mean, we're all set up.
Yeah, so...
Get with the program, Molly.
I know. I can't afford a self-destruct button right now. It's like Phineas and Ferb. Dr. Doofenshmirtz puts a self-destruct button on everything. And then it always blows up. That's how it's a great TV show. I highly recommend it. Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb. I just wanted to get really close to say that. Phineas and Ferb. Erotic hair sniffing. Okay, stop.
I can't stop. I'm trying to look. I'm looking at the rest of my notes here really quick. But
you're good.
Oh yeah, and then Peter accidentally shoots Bella because he thinks that he's struggling with his wife, and he's really just they're both trying to get the key out of the dead servant's hand or something.
Yeah, to escape.
And then so he accidentally shoots him, and then the wife runs up to him like, hey, you kind of shot the wrong guy. But then trying to help.
But I mean, then he's like,
they're doomed anyway, so they're like, yeah, just go, I'm fine.
And so the couple escapes, the American couple escapes, and then as they're getting to the taxi, the house explodes in the distance.
Yeah. In a very dramatic fashion. It's quite interesting. Like, they wanted fireworks for their honeymoon, they got it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Not what my first night would want to be like, but but yeah, so every house has a self-destruct button in Universal Hollywood. No, I'm kidding.
Well, but it's very House of Usher. Yeah. Why didn't they call it House of Usher? That would have made so much more sense.
It's actually closer in plot, probably.
Yeah. I mean, kind of. Although, I mean, the best House of Usher, obviously, is the Vincent Price one.
Yeah.
Get me that loot. Anyways.
I don't even know. Do I have anything else to say? I don't think so.
Well, no. So, how the film ends. How's the film end? It ends...
In a train carriage.
In a train carriage again. And the husband has written all of this.
He's a novelist.
He's a novelist, as we all are.
As we all want to be.
Exactly.
Yes.
And a review comes in, and the review from the American newspaper says, oh, this was written really well, but it's pretty unbelievable. And then it's one of those, and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, and they look at each other, and they turn slowly to each other and look at each other like, what the fuck? It's funny. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was watching it last night. I kind of didn't understand the humor when I was younger. I mean, I understood it. I thought, oh, yeah, that's a cute little ending. But I think now, to me, it's even funnier because it's kind of absurd. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I mean, I guess they wanted to have something... Because in other movies, they literally just end with the explosion and they have the end and then the universal plane comes on. But for this, it's like, oh, no, we're going to have a quick little cute recap. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. No, and I mean... It's a movie that makes you feel a lot of very different things. Because it's really entertaining. It's really funny in a lot of parts just because it's so absurd.
Yeah.
It's also very dark. But, it's dark, but it's not overwhelmingly so. Because it's not a movie about torture and all these terrible things that happen. It's a movie, I think, this research that I did just, reinforced for me that it's about the war.
Oh, absolutely. I was getting that much more last night because I thought, oh, maybe I imagined it because, World War I is one of my specialties or something. But I actually was like, yeah, they do actually even have that kind of one of their initial conversations is about that.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me.
Yeah. And in that philosophy of horror chapter, the author writes that the story kind of plays on the idea of Europe seeing America as, quote, the child that got away, the offspring of Europe that rebelled against it and in many ways wanted to surpass it. Like many Europeans, Ulmer could not help treating Americans with a mixture of admiration and contempt. Yet in the end, he seems to turn to them as the only hope of escaping, as he himself had done because he was Austrian and Hungarian and came over here.
Yeah.
The only hope of escaping from a Europe morbidly fixated on its own conflicted past and becoming self-destructive in its obsessions. And
that's totally valid.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And it's amazing at the time that it came out, because I don't know how much awareness there was in America at the time of what was happening with Hitler and the rise of Nazism. I don't know at what point that even started.
I don't know either. I mean, people in those same Eastern European countries didn't even know half the time. So you think about what happens to people in that area, and it's like, man, they really had to escape a lot. So I think in a weird sort of way, the theme that comes up a lot of movies is escape.
Yeah.
Because the directors themselves either experienced these things personally, or they, or they saw these themes happening and they're like, oh man, I have to capture that. Or maybe they just did it subconsciously. Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting time to be watching the movie too right now, because it's June of 2018, and there's a lot of political unrest in our own country. Yeah, and it's just, the idea of a country that is so, where's the quote? Destructive in its obsessions,
So, I mean, but I know what you're saying, and like, it is a different dynamic. And I think these older films are, I mean, they're still relevant because you're still dealing with political unrest.
But this really captures a moment in time.
It is very much of a time period.
Of World War II. And so I'm curious.
Leading up to it was the tension.
Yeah. Or World War II, but coming off of World War.
But also that's a good point though, between the wars. That's a very, very significant time period for art. I mean, it's early modernism, it's leading in toward, kind of late modernism. It's getting to the war. I mean, you're kind of at this last creative stage before things really kind of went from old world to new world. So you still, and like you said, you've got that tension there in the movie between the old world and the new world. So. Yeah.
And so it feels universal in a way, like you said about the civil unrest. I mean,
it's going to fester.
Cages or women in suspended aquariums, things are going to explode eventually.
Absolutely.
If you don't
literally and physically. And I think that's really important. It's like, okay, that's what the aim that I thought we had for this podcast is that we want to talk about bigger issues. I mean, we're not going to use it all the time, but they're going to come up. We cannot possibly avoid them. One of the films we're talking about in future is going to have, whitewashing involved. And these issues, we can't ignore them. They're going to come up. We watch a lot of movies, and each movie has its own issue. Go ahead.
And it's not always going to be like a political issue.
Absolutely.
That comes out. It might be like a theological issue.
Certainly.
So don't get freaked out. I guess it's not going to be like...
It's not going to be a political show.
Yeah, no.
But, I mean, because we have a lot to say about
we do.
Everything.
But so I mean, the whole because in this a weird way, this movie is a very political one for the time that it came out.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and so setting that aside, though, the idea of this movie coming out at the height of the monster craze, kind of in Universal, is also really fascinating.
Very, very
because
important.
It doesn't fit in. It's not a Frankenstein.
Not really. Yeah.
It's not a Dracula. It's not like a monster. It's just a human.
Yes. It's sort of like monstrousness within human beings. And so it fits in with the genre because Lugosi and Karloff are there, and it's very, high contrast art and all that, and it fits that sort of mold. But like, as you say, it's not an actual monster. It's not Frankenstein's creation. It's not, a zombie. It's not XYZ. It's like, it's something else. And I think that's why this movie stands out to me personally so much, is because it's not about those things. It's about something in a way deeper and more scary.
It's a character study. It feels like a Hannibal in that way, which is when we're leading into my crack pitch. Here we go. So we're watching this movie, and I'm like,
yeah, we need to recast this whole thing.
We need to update it, because just everything that's all the crazy stuff that's happening, I'm like, this is the perfect vehicle for like a 3 season, like canceled after 3 seasons Hannibal type show, okay?
Yeah.
And we also did some fan casting with it, where we're going to put Daniel Craig as Boris Karloff's character and Ben Whishaw as Peter Allison, because, you know, you kind of want to get that James Bond pairing in there.
Yeah.
And so one of the big things with Hannibal, not that I've seen the show, but it's very much centered on the relationship between the two men, and it's like everything is very subtextual.
Yes.
So I kind of would want that to be the focus of any modern remake. Have it not be like that he's so much fascinated with just the wife, but with people in general. And like the Ben Whishaw character is just more kind of innocent and falls in love or fascination or something with this character.
Infatuation. Into a toxic relationship. No, kidding.
Well, yeah, you know, and the Daniel Craig character is still, you know, marrying women, murdering them, doing his thing, but there's this weird sort of fascination with each other that culminates with the Peter Allison character embalming the Daniel Craig character.
Wild. Yeah, I remember your crack pitch now.
Yeah. And then so the final line.
I think I was movie drunk when you said that. I even
wrote the final line down. It says, "Don't you know Hjalmar?" Because that's the name. Because it's going to be still the same setting.
Same
might be modern, but like the same house kind of thing. Anyways, don't you know you are the very core and meaning of my life? No one shall take you from me. You'll be perfect forever. For me. Just for me. And I'm blatantly ripping off of the lines from the actual movie, because I'm pretty sure at one point Boris Karloff says, "You are the very core and meaning of my life."
Yes, he does at one point.
But you could say to Karen, "You're the very core and the meaning of my life." I feel like you could do it in a really creepy way. So that's how I would update it. I feel like I'm surprised that with Universal, I mean, I get it. This isn't one of the more well-known monster movies.
Because the public's more interested in zombies and fishmen at this point. We haven't moved on to...
Who isn't into fishmen, though?
Well, now we all are.
Exactly.
Thanks, Guillermo.
I mean, Abe Sapien, too, is kind of, like, cute. You're like...
Who is basically their son.
Basically.
Okay, we're getting into Shape of Water. Stop it. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I brought him up.
Anyways, that was my crack pitch for this episode.
Okay, so ratings. What are we going to rate this?
It needs to be complete.
Cats out of 10.
Cats out of 10. I think you said 8 out of 10 cats.
I said 8 out of 10 cats.
I would say, and these ratings really mean nothing.
They're just arbitrary.
Arbitrating. We're arbitrating. We're arbitrarily.
Isn't that appliance firm? No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I mean, I would say 8 out of 10 cats, because it's like recommending this movie to people is challenging in the sense that you would have to know the very specific taste of the person that you were recommending it to.
But why would you recommend this movie to someone that's listening?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to ask you what your opinion is on this too. I think I would recommend it because it's two famous stars. It's Karloff and Lugosi
in their first crossover.
Is it? Oh, okay. Is their first movie together?
This is the first movie they did together.
Great.
Yeah.
So there's that, and I think that there's a lot of very deep themes in it. Mm-hmm. And also just for the weirdness, just for the pleasure of the weirdness. I mean, appreciating the whole Bauhaus kind of style set design, which is I'm a nerd for. I love that. And so there's that aspect of it. And then on the other side of the coin of the freakiness aspect, it's just fun to watch an old movie and how they approach these themes. Like nowadays, if there's a movie that involves any kind of Satanism or demon worship, it's like that's the center of the movie. But for this, it's kind of mixed in.
And it's just supposed to kind of give flavor to the fact that these are deeply troubled people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that in a way is, I mean, that's kind of the message of the movie. I think deep down is that, these are people very troubled by the war, and this is, And
if you don't try, you can either choose to fester and stay in the evil that is in your life, or you can choose to try and move past it.
Yeah.
And Americans are able to do that. Bella and Boris are not able to, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would
what was your reason?
Yeah, I'd recommend it for the same reasons, too. It's a ton of fun to watch just because it is so out there.
Oh, absolutely.
But it comes at a really interesting time in film history. And we didn't even get to spend any time talking about the way the film is shot or like a lot of the set design or the costumes, and you really can't describe it.
You have to watch it.
It's something that has to be seen. Like a Guillermo del Toro movie, you have to watch it. You can't go off of words alone. Just the way it's shot, the way the set is designed is just really fascinating, and that they did it in such a short amount of time is fascinating.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And the fact that they did choose all these really terrible things as kind of like we said, clearly shock value, but really it's to service this deeper sort of moral perversion in the hearts of these people. And he's very clearly making a statement about Europe and that we're just leading to a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And then 10 years, I mean, not even 5 years later.
He wants to leave all that bitterness behind. Yeah, and like you said, 10 years later.
5 years later, it's World War II.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would just recommend it for that.
Yeah. And I actually kind of Googled other stuff that Ulmer did, and I looked into kind of similar movies. There isn't a similar movie. This is such a one-off. This is such a one-off. You cannot try to even duplicate it. I mean, well, you can try to fan cast it, but, you know, it's such its own little animal. It's its own little, you know, static thing. I just love it so much.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous and so deep and beautiful and weird and everything.
And that's what's kind of amazing about the Universal Monster, the oeuvre of the time.
Yeah.
I guess. The fact that we did get so many of these movies that have that many layers of meaning that should just be stupid monster movies, but they're not. Like the direct,
they're not at all.
And I think that is one of the reasons why I'm drawn to classic film too, is because nowadays it could just be any kind of dumb monster. I mean, look at The Mummy with Tom Cruise. That had nothing going on.
I didn't even go near it.
But the directors cared about this stuff so much, and they put so much heart into these movies that could have been just crap.
Yeah.
But there's a reason it sticks. There's a reason why we still talk about these movies, or why these movies need to be revived. And I think that's kind of...
They're being revived a certain amount, but I mean, I definitely, I feel like people could revisit them.
And that's what our podcast is all about. It's about revisiting these old classics and looking at, you know...
what they mean to us now.
And what can storytellers of our generation, people that want to tell stories like us, what can we learn, you know?
Yeah. And they're also beautifully filmed.
They are.
Films. They really are. Even like you said, on a budget, where you do it in 15 days, they're all so incredible. Yeah. And they're usually done on, like, backlots.
I know.
And that's what makes it even more exciting in a way, because it's like they had this vision. They wanted to piece together this monster of a film, and they were successful, and it's exciting. It's exciting to watch.
Yeah, and there's something so impressive just about the movies of that time, because they didn't have CGI.
Or
things like that.
You couldn't possibly fake anything.
Yeah, no, this is all like by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah,
Is that the phrase?
By the skin of your teeth, by the seat of your pants, the same kind of thing.
By the skin of your teeth is weird. It's a weird. Anyways,
there's a whole thing. Idioms are insane.
Yeah. Anyways, so long story short, Black Cat. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And you know, thanks for sticking through and listening with us. I think this is
thank you very much.
A super fun journey. We
have
a whole list of what we want to talk about.
We have a spreadsheet, man.
We do.
It's full. It's packed. We have enough for like at least a year.
At least.
Probably more.
Yeah, I mean, we've charted through the end of the year. It's going to be good. It's going to be really good to get to talk about something we love so much and share it with you, and hopefully you can share it with us. And who doesn't like a good story?
Yeah. I'm excited.
All right.
That's been great. So
it's been great.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Molly. This is Shadow and Light. And one final note, shout out to my friend Zach, a.k.a. Thunderbolt Z, for the awesome intro music. He literally sat down, he spent half an hour watching the intros to classic films and then just wrote that.
That's so nice.
I know.
It's really cute. It's very cute.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
See you next time.